Georgia, Clemson, noon Eastern, ABC, Atlanta, Georgia, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Georgia favored by 13.5. I want to start with what this means for Georgia. For Georgia, man, this is a chance to make a point to the rest of college football. Because how many times have we sat here throughout the course of this offseason and told you, man, Georgia, they're the best team in America. They have the best roster in college football. That's great to talk about all the way up until it's time to actually play football games. You can say whatever you want about a football team until they actually have to make it matter, make it count. And in a game like this, as much as we talk about Georgia, how talented they are, like they're not playing some G5 school. Clemson isn't just stocked with 3-star talent. Like Clemson's got some real deal dudes now that can make something happen if Georgia does not bring their A game to the table. So if Georgia goes in there and covers that number, which we'll talk about a little bit later when it comes to our pick in this game, this is not some sort of like situation where you just say, oh yeah, Georgia, that's a nice win. No, like that's a really good Clemson football team from a roster talent level. Do they put it together? Remains to be seen. Because as much as the conversation around Georgia is their chance to make a point, make a statement, hey, we are that big dog in the sport, college football sickos, week 1 is here. Whether you're a Georgia fan or whether you're a Clemson fan, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. It's college football. It's nothing but college football. And it's college football the way that you want it discussed and covered. No hot takes, no extra additives or preservatives or stuff that we don't mean. It's clickbait just being said to be said. College football by college football fans on this show. We appreciate y'all being subscribed. For Clemson, think about what we would say about Dabo Swinney and co. if they beat Georgia. Just think about this, because right now we're talking about how he's not taking callers, and Tyler from Spartanburg, took the caller-driven portion off of his radio show and whatnot, and like he's kind of been the butt of a lot of jokes. He's been the example you point to as to why you need to use the transfer portal. Talking about Clemson and their downward spiral since college football has evolved into what it is right now in the modern era with NIL and the portal. If they beat Georgia, you completely hit the reset on your perception of Dabo Swinney and what he's done at Clemson. If they beat Georgia, you're saying, okay, Clemson's going to be a force now. Forget the ACC. I'm talking about the college football playoff, because if Clemson beats Georgia, who else on their schedule is better from a roster talent perspective? For my money, nobody. And that's not throwing shade at anybody else they have on the schedule. That's just the facts. Okay? So when it comes to breaking down this game, we got to start in the trenches, man. Got to start in the trenches. And the question I'm asking more specifically in the trenches is, when Georgia has the football, can Clemson hold up to what I believe is going to be the potential strength of Georgia's offense? The running back room, you got some question marks. To be honest, I don't know that it matters all that much for me in terms of picking this game, who they have toting the mail for them. They have 4 of 5 starters back on the offensive line. And what we said in our early look at this game, if Georgia's able to run the football, control the line of scrimmage, and just squeeze the life out of the game, 1, Georgia's probably covering that number. 2, it opens up the rest of the menu. It's like when your local finance bro goes to dinner on the company card. Everything is on the table for him, all right? He can order whatever he wants. That's Georgia's offense. So for Clemson, Peter Woods, baby, legacy game. True sophomore. You can make an argument this is the biggest spot of his career. Need him to anchor down that defense. It's a young front seven. Him and Barrett Carter will have to bring their A game and then some to be able to force Georgia into some more obvious passing situations. Just force them into third and passing. Count that as a dub. Just give your defense a chance. Because, again, if you can't do that, Carson Beck, man, he's back there, playing darts. Just that's my dart sound effect for those of y'all listening on podcast. He will have a field day. Because if you have to add in extra numbers to the box, it will be a very, very long day, and Georgia will score a whole lot of points. So in a spot like this, where Georgia is favored by just about 2 touchdowns, it doesn't take a whole lot of novel analysis to tell you, oh yeah, Georgia's going to win the football game. Like that's the easy take to have here. Let's explore what it would look like if Clemson were to win this game. What would it take? We said this again in our early looks. It's another reason to subscribe to the channel, because we give you a lot of content around these matchups. In our early look at this game, Clemson winning would not be a straight up matchup kind of football game. Like what I mean by that is, as talented as Clemson is, Georgia has been stocking the cupboard with 5-star talent since Kirby Smart got there, more or less. And so for Clemson, you can't just play straight up our guy versus your guy. So offensively, if they want to generate some offense, if they want to generate some points, it's going to take a little bit of sleight of hand, a little bit of creativity, if you will. That's where Garrett Riley comes into play here. Now, a lot of folks can be very quick to point to the TCU-Georgia game where Georgia drugged them in the national championship. Garrett Riley was the OC at TCU. It is what it is. New game. I think Clemson has a little more juice at the wide receiver position this year than they've had in the past. Antonio Williams is a name that you know if you're a Clemson fan. Tyler Brown stepped up in a big way last year. But there's two receivers that are freshmen that we'll see what the impact they have on this game is, but the potential for them to contribute is there. Bryant Wesco had a nice spring game for Clemson, 4-star cat. TJ Moore was a 5-star for us here at On 3. And both bring, I believe, the athleticism and the wide receiver one traits that Clemson has been lacking. Like, Clemson has not had a 1,000-yard wide receiver since 2020 on the season, okay? So it's going to take something like that for them to win a football game like this. So going back to Garrett Riley, do you throw him the keys? We had Jesse Simonton on the show, I want to say it was around 2-ish weeks ago, and he put it so perfectly. Clemson's offense has been the putt-putt version of what Garrett Riley is able to do. Like, yeah, he's got his name at the OC spot on your program when you break it open on game day, but, like, it wasn't really Garrett Riley's offense. There's not really that creativity and the window dressing and the aggression there that you've come to expect from him. I think the ingredients and the strategy is there for Clemson to have success. Again, if and only if they turn it over to Garrett Riley, and if and only if Kade Klubnik is able to put away what he hasn't done successfully over the course of his last couple of years at Clemson. Because as much as I like Kade Klubnik, I believe his stats against Power 4 competition last season was like 12 touchdowns to 8 picks. That's not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. Now, one thing I would say, his ability to use his legs could end up being a major X factor in this game. Again, Garrett Riley, if you know what he's done as a coordinator, he likes to incorporate some quarterback run game. That's kind of the overall just like question variable that could give a defense some issues. So we'll see how much they incorporate that there. But Kade Klubnik, man, cannot turn the football over. Cannot turn the football over. If you want to win this game, got to be efficient, got to be a threat with your legs, and cannot throw the football to Georgia. So those are kind of the key matchups to watch. Here are just some overall takes on what this game is going to look like. I think Georgia, with how they're built offensively and what they have just from top to bottom on this roster, they have the ability to be so multiple in any game, especially in this one. Like, if you are able to score points offensively, if you're Clemson, you're able to kind of generate some of that juice we talked about. They're firing on all cylinders. Carson Beck just kind of warms up the arm. All right, we're good to go. They can play a shootout style of game with you. If Clemson decides they want to try and hold the ball and keep Carson Beck off the field, one, I think the Georgia front seven is more than good enough to handle that. Two, Georgia is also able to offensively, with this front seven, I believe, good enough to control the game themselves. So any way you slice it, I think Georgia, with how multiple they are, is at a major advantage here. Roster talent, yes, but in the trenches especially, that's a major differentiating factor for me. If Clemson were to win this football game, it would take something from them offensively we haven't seen in a minute. Like, it would be, I think, very surprising if Clemson were to go out there and score in the high 20s. And that's not throwing shade at Clemson. That's just the reality here. It would take something from them against this elite defense that we have not seen just yet. This game, to me, screams 2022 Oregon and Georgia. Georgia returning quarterback. Clemson has some potential on that roster, but this is one that I think we see Georgia flex their muscle a bit. I think we see them take care of business. I have Georgia winning. I have Georgia covering. Now, one more thing I would say to the Clemson fans watching. Remember that game where Georgia, again, they drug Oregon. It was Dan Lanning's first game. It was Bo Nix's first game as a Duck. That team still went on to win, I believe, if not double-digit games, right around double-digit games. So don't write off Clemson just because they get beat by Georgia. We said that before. We'll say that again. We'll say that after if that ends up being the case. So again, we have Georgia winning this football game. and we have them doing it in convincing fashion.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.